Godzilla, king of the monsters. Who doesn't love him? Oh, right, the people of Japan. Unleashed in 1954, Godzilla owes its parentage to three men and two recent events: the successful release of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and re-release of King Kong, and the tragedy of the Lucky Dragon No. 5. The Lucky Dragon and its crew of 23 men was a Japanese tuna fishing boat that had the misfortune of straying too close to Bikini Atoll during the US test of the first hydrogen bomb. Within hours, the crew, their catch, and the ship itself were all severely contaminated with radiation. A fictionalized version of this event begins Godzilla. The three men who would seize on these events and create the longest-running film series in cinematic history are Tomoyuki Tanaka, the film's producer, Ishiro Honda, the film's co-writer and director, and special effects mastermind Eiji Tsuburaya. Much has been made about Godzilla being a parable for the bombing of Japan at the end of World War II, and that's undeniable. He was awakened by a hydrogen bomb, he breathes nuclear fire. Hell, his skin is modeled on those of the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But I'd also posit that the first film is as much wish fulfillment as it is a chilling reminder of the horrors of nuclear proliferation. In it, a newly awakened giant lays waste to both Japanese cities and people before being turned back out to sea and ultimately defeated. And unlike the scientists of the Manhattan Project, Dr. Serizawa, the creator of the oxygen destroyer that kills Godzilla, commits suicide after the fact, so that no other nation could know its design and employ it as a weapon of war. Given the film's massive success, the following year brought a sequel, Godzilla Raids Again. No mean feat given that Godzilla had been completely dissolved. This film gave us a second monster, who again attacks Japan wantonly before being dispatched by the military. And that was it. No more Godzilla for the next 7 years. Which isn't to say that Japan remained unmolested during that time. Oh no. The populace found themselves on the defense from winged menace Rodan, invaders from Mars, the Mysterians, whatever the hell Varan is, I think it might be a mutated flying squirrel, and nobody's favorite, Mothra. Although Mothra wasn't a newly awakened giant attacking randomly, rather she was the defender of Infant Island, and assaulted Japan only after its tiny telepathic singing twins were abducted. Thus, Mothra provided an unprecedented element to giant monster films, the creature as hero. The makers of Godzilla would seize upon this notion and use it to revitalize and reimagine the series. With the 1962 release of Godzilla vs. King Kong, there began a rubber-suited golden age, also known as the Showa age of Godzilla films. Gone were the social messages and portentous themes, replaced with giant monsters duking it out in the style of professional wrestling, which had become insanely popular in Japan. No longer Tokyo's terror, but instead its defender, Godzilla fought against and sometimes alongside such Toho luminaries as Rodan, King Ghidorah, and nobody's favorite, Mothra. Sure, he was still hell on the architecture, but it wasn't with menace. As the 60s drew to a close, the film skewed younger and younger, and most of what had initially appealed about Godzilla seemed to slip away. The problem with discussing the Godzilla films is you'll eventually have to deal with this guy.
Hey, in Japan, it's actually pronounced Gojira.
Beat it, fake nerd.
Star Trek is better than Star Wars!
I hate that guy. As the 70s began, so did a new phase for Godzilla, or Gojira. Ugh. While still technically part of the Showa period, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, or as it was known in the United States, Godzilla vs. the SMOG monster, marked a sea change in the franchise. A change not always regarded as positive. In fact, many filmgoers, critics, and even producer Tanaka would declare that this is the worst film in the series. We'll get to that in a moment, but first let's take a look at the film itself, and keep in mind that all those dissenters are dead wrong. Godzilla vs. Hedorah is the best. The film centers around the Yano family. It stars Akira Yamauchi as Dr. Toru Yano, a marine biologist. His son Ken, guess who he'll be rooting for, is played by Hiroyuki Kawase, and an unfortunate romper turtleneck combo. Daughter Toshi is played by... oh, who am I kidding? The film stars Haruo Nakajima as Godzilla, and Kenpachiro Satsuma as Hedorah. Everyone talks about Viggo Mortensen breaking his toe while filming Fellowship of the Ring, and Leonardo DiCaprio slicing open his hand in the scene from Django Unchained. Well, Satsuma had his appendix removed while still wearing the Hedorah costume. True story? Maybe. Hedorah begins life as a saltwater tadpole that is theorized to have fallen to Earth attached to a meteorite. Once it interacts with the frightening levels of industrial sludge off the Japanese coast, he begins to grow exponentially, both in size and the ability to corrode all he touches. With a seemingly endless supply of pollutants on which to feed, from oil tankers, to smokestacks, to good old-fashioned automobiles, Hedorah becomes a giant monster nearly impossible to defeat, although there is one who will stand against him, and he's never met a giant monster he couldn't trounce. Not you. Nice sonic screwdriver, by the way.
Yeah, it's also an electric shaver. Listen, you keep saying giant monster, but the proper term is kaiju.
Now that's actually true. People who speak Japanese have been calling these films kaiju for close to 60 years now. But you? I'm guessing you started on July 12th, 2013. That's the day Pacific Rim came out.
Well, no, I've been calling it that for years, man.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you have. By the way, who's your favorite Doctor?
Well, I like the second Doctor the best. David Tennant.
Get out of here, fake nerd.
DC is better than Marvel!
Orchestrating the battle of two giant monsters was a newcomer to the series, Banno Yoshimitsu. He had spent the better part of a decade as an assistant director, working on some amazing films, like Kurosawa's The Bad Sleep Well, The Hidden Fortress, and Throne of Blood. He was given free rein to take Godzilla into the 70s. And boy, did he ever! He utilized psychedelic freakouts, some fantastic hand-drawn animations. This is an explanation of nuclear fission. Here's one that's furthering the plot. Yet another that serves as both plot and transition. Speaking of which, Banno employs some of the best transitions not only in the Godzilla franchise, but in any film ever. This is a linking scene that, aside of being super cool, addresses the futility of the media long before anyone was concerned with such a notion. Another aspect he managed to bring front and center was consequence. There isn't just massive damage to cities where things blow up real good, though admittedly they do that spectacularly well. People die. Horribly. Something that hadn't happened in any Godzilla film since 1954. Even with all of that, Yoshimitsu still manages to deliver a thoroughly rousing film. And at half the budget of previous entries, with less than 35 shooting days, and only a single film unit to shoot both the human drama and the monstrous mayhem. In the end, Godzilla and Hedorah do battle, good triumphs over evil, and all is right with the world. Except for the unchecked rampant pollution that even a 40-story prehistoric reptile has no interest in sticking around to watch happen. And yet, this is the film derided as the worst in the series. We all know this is the worst. Upon seeing Godzilla vs. Hedorah for the first time, producer Tanaka shook Yoshimitsu and screamed, "You've ruined Godzilla," before banning him from working on any future films. It's a staggeringly wrong-headed reaction. Godzilla vs. Hedorah is the perfect fusion of what made the monster so appealing to begin with, and what audiences had come to expect in all the films since. Of every film in the franchise, it's the one you need to see. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe or check out some of my other videos.